Welcome to the Job Shop Show, where we talk with the owners, suppliers, partners, and customers of custom manufacturers. Listen and learn the secrets of top-performing job shops, the tools, techniques, and backgrounds that have made them successful, all in the quest of raising the bar for custom manufacturing. I'm your host, Jay Jacobs. This episode is sponsored by Paperless Parts, connecting buyers and suppliers of custom manufactured parts. The Paperless platform is a secure, ITAR-compliant, cloud-based manufacturing system for suppliers that reduces the amount of time spent on sales, estimating, quoting, administration, and order processing. It offers seamless integration with the accounting and ERP software tools that shops already use, such as QuickBooks, E2, and JobBoss. Paperless Parts was founded with a mission to make manufacturing more accessible by streamlining the quote-to-cash process. Spend less time quoting and more time selling.
Zam! This is Jay Jacobs. Welcome back once again to the Job Shop Show. One of the things I'm enjoying after doing the podcast for several years is some of the connections that have been made because of the show and the reach of the show, which has really surprised me. Today we have a couple guests from Brisbane, Australia. Yes, the land down under. Glenn Langford and Nathan Hockey from Metal Tech Industries, aka MTI, have been longtime listeners and have implemented technology that they heard about because of the podcast. They're here now to talk about their journey. MTI is a family-run sheet metal powerhouse with over 50 years of history and a passion for innovation. From lights-out manufacturing to next-gen quoting technology, these guys are redefining what's possible in a modern fab shop. Let's jump into their story. Done. Let's jump into their story. Glenn and Nathan, welcome to the Job Shop Show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I'm in Pacific time right now. It's 2 o'clock my time. I guess it's just after 7 a.m. your time. Thanks for coming on. You are our first guest who are not continental North America. And welcome to the show from Australia.
Thanks again.
Looking forward to it.
So I have so many questions. Went to your website, got a little bit of the history of your company. Obviously, bending metal, you're a sheet metal fabricator. It's the same wherever you are. However, there's got to be nuances and differences. And before we get into those, maybe we could paint the picture of who Metal Tech Industries is. And I know you go more by the initials MTI. Tell us a little bit about the history of the company, the size of the shop, what you guys like to do, and then maybe how you guys came into your roles, because you've been in business, I think, for over 40 years.
Yeah, it's over 50 years now, Metal Tech. So my father-in-law, Nathan's grandfather, started over 50 years ago, purchased a second company and joined them together and moved to where we are now, into our purpose-built site at Wacol in sunny Queensland, Australia. Back then it was generic sheet metal. We're doing a lot of transport, so Volvo trucks, Mack trucks, and some for Kenworth as well. It was a high percentage of our business, plus a little metal polishing for the medical industry as well on the side. And then since then, it's diversified into a wide, broad range of areas that we do fab for. You talk more about, Nath, about the size and what we are now, I suppose.
Yeah. So we offer a broad range of services from laser cutting, turret punching, CNC bending, hardware insertion, welding, fabrication, in-house powder coating and assembly. I think you touched on the sectors, Glenn.
About square feet of the shop, number of folks, are you running more than one shift?
Yeah, we're running one shift. We have about 45 employees. We operate out of a 4,500 square meter facility. That's about 50,000 square feet in Imperial.
Yeah.
And located in Brisbane, Australia. Yeah.
So if someone doesn't know where Brisbane is in Australia, can you give us the northeast, the northwest, southeast, southwest? Where is Brisbane, and is that a heavy manufacturing area in Australia?
Yeah, Brisbane's in the northeast of Australia. It is a large manufacturing hub for the Australian manufacturing industry. It's experiencing rapid growth at the moment, and it has been for some years. It's a great area for the business to be located, actually.
If you are thinking Australian manufacturing, what do you guys really excel in as a country, and where you're contributing to the OEM?
It's a difficult question, actually. Australian manufacturing was a powerhouse in the 70s. However, the manufacturing industry has been shrinking over the last few decades. However, it's having a bit of resurgence lately. I suppose broadly speaking, Australia is a huge exporter of iron ore, which we sell to Asian markets and so on. We're just, I suppose, Metaltech's just a general sheet metal manufacturer. So like we said earlier, we supply the trucking industry, the construction, electrical industry. It's a small industry manufacturing in Australia, so there's not much really to highlight there.
Are the parts you're making, are those more for products that are sold into those industries, or are they like if someone is mining or they have different equipment that they're designing to facilitate what they're doing?
We're mainly making components or small sub-assemblies for products or OEMs.
Okay. I looked at your video, and just if someone has access to a computer while they're listening to the URL website for MTI is metaltech, metaltech.com.au. And you got a great video on your website showing the shop, the equipment. Really, I haven't seen a lot of the Trump pneumatic, the cells like that set up. That was pretty impressive. You guys are a Trump shop. Why Trump? And then I want to know about this cell and why you made that big investment.
Well, yeah, Trump's a fantastic machine manufacturer. In our opinion, it's at the forefront of machine technology. There's a few reasons why we selected the Trump machinery. It's not just the machines itself, it's the software suite that services the machines. So the programming software from the bending machines, it's all offline. It's very fast, it's very quick. And then the machines themselves, fantastic machines, very reliable. We've had one laser that's currently in the shop running for 20 years with no major issues.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
The Trumatic 6000, the KO6, was a game changer. For us, it was during COVID times. So you couldn't do the generic of jump on a plane, go to Europe or the States and look at it and touch and feel, be tangible, get a real idea. So Nathan and I spent many months ripping our hair out and making the decision about the combo machine. And eventually we were the first Australian company to bring that Trump machine in. And it was a game changer for us. It gave us lights out, complete lights out running, to the point that our employees didn't believe us because they hadn't been exposed to combo running lights out before. And one day they walked back in at 6 a.m. to start their morning shift, and the KO6 was still humping away, doing its thing, and they couldn't believe it. So the throughput capacity and flexibility that item gives us is amazing. And I think there's 3 others now in the country, Nath. I could be wrong, maybe 2, but 3. I think there's 3. So.
I suppose an example of why that machine has been so good for us is we have a lot of parts that require tapping, for example.
Yeah.
And it was a separate process. So Glenn and I noticed on any given day, we'd have 3 or 4 people tapping just small parts, just a repetitive, monotonous job. So with the combo, we can now have all those processes in the one operation, which is, helped efficiencies. And since then, we've brought on many new parts just because of having the available.
That must be a huge competitive advantage on parts that are tapped.
Oh, a massive advantage, yeah.
And I always love it when people say, oh, well, there's an example of a machine taking someone's job. And first of all, who wants to tap parts all day? But second, I'm sure that there were other places in the shop where you were able to redeploy them and increase your capacity.
Yeah, so in the last 8 years, actually in the first 4.5 years, I think it was 13 different bits of kit we put into the facility, all new technologies. We had 17 employees back then. And as Nathan mentioned before, we're on that 45 mark now. We've never once removed an employee from our business due to technology. It's given them opportunities to work elsewhere inside the business and even move off the factory floor for some of the staff to move up from within. So it's a great opportunity. And the old statement of, people get scared of new technology, they do, but once they realize that it's not going to take their job, it's part of moving them forward in progression, generally speaking, people will harness it.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I noticed about that piece of equipment is it allows you to do a little forming in the machine. Do you actually use that capability at all?
Yeah, we do quite a lot. We do burst extrusions, the roll. I still call it the roller wheel, but it's the offset wheel, Nath. There's some items that we make for a particular company that were being made in Europe and obviously exported in or imported into Australia for their purposes. Now they would do them here in our building, so it saves them on all that freight and time and shipping costs. That's something we use multiple times throughout any given week.
What else has resulted? I think about people coming in at 6 a.m. and the machine's still putting out parts. How has that changed the dynamics of the shop? Once you harness that, where did it take the shop?
It helped improve process because suddenly you have multiple times more cut componentry through your factory. And you need to ship that because there's no point having metal sitting on the floor not making money. So you need it to move in order to get out the door. So you start improving processes and getting your employees buy-in on each section and improving what they do and the throughput, because people realize as humans that there's actually a lot of work there. It's not, it's not quiet. We can take our time and stretch this out. We actually have to keep, down here we use a word, keep humping. Otherwise, it's going to build up. So that's probably one of the added benefits we've discovered from it. It's a tangible result that you can see. It's not something you just talk about on a whiteboard.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. The amount of work, if it's less, expands to the time, and if you add more, magically it takes less time because people are people. They sort of know what's going to be required in a day based upon the part load coming at them, and if they've got that sort of part load coming at them, you gotta do things a little differently. One of the things I noticed is you call what we would call in the U.S. bending or forming, you call it folding. And is that a common term?
Yeah, I think it gets called both bending and folding over here. It's also called pressing. So it depends on who's looking at the machine or the process. They all have a different name for it. But as Australians, we also like to give nicknames to a lot of things. So there could be all sorts of weird and wonderful names for that process.
Yeah. What sort of quantities are you guys making? As I think about the machine running essentially 2 shifts overnight there, what's an average lot size for you guys?
I suppose an average lot size will range from, apart from prototyping, would be 10 units to the low thousands. Yeah, but if I had to give you a number, I'd say it'd be around between 50 and 100, somewhere around there.
So when you're putting through a lot of the blanking at night, are you then making, maybe there's a high mix, lower volume type thing where you're putting a bunch of different part numbers on the same sheet and nesting for efficiency so that in the end, and I don't know if you do assemblies or not, but you're either providing a bunch of unique part numbers or you're welding or somehow forming them into an assembly?
Yeah, so we run a lot of the high mix, low volume during the day while we have operators there. And
Okay.
we do a lot of repetitive work, Joe. And throughout the night, we're usually running those jobs, whether it be holding some stock for a customer or for a large order that's currently running through the shop.
Do you have blanket orders, or how does repeat production parts, how does that work with your customer base?
Depends on the customers. For some of our larger customers, we'll have blanket purchase orders. So for others, it's more of an informal agreement. It depends solely on the customer. But yeah, repeat work, it's what we do best, and it suits us nicely with the setup that we've got.
Yeah. Have you been in any U.S. shops to see how manufacturing is done in the States?
No, but we would love to. So if any American shops who are listening to this, we'd appreciate an opportunity to have a look to see how you guys do it over there.
I think there'd be a lot of folks who'd love to have you come in and exchange ideas. Certainly, you're not competitors.
No, definitely not.
No,
Definitely not.
no.
How do you compete with other shops in Australia? Do you ship outside of the Brisbane area, or are you mostly competing with local shops?
So we're mostly competing with local shops. We do ship nationwide, but I'd say 90% of the parts we ship are to the local area. Suppose we compete on turnaround. We'll start with quoting, actually, quick quoting and quick turnaround and quality. We've had a lot of feedback from our customers that our quality has exceeded a lot of our competition. So we take great pride in that, and usually gives us the edge, a combination of all those things.
Why do you think your quality is better? What makes that?
That's a good question. I think it's the care of the employees that we have. I think it's the process that we've implemented, and it's also the equipment, the technology that we've got behind the scenes that's monitoring I suppose the process, and yeah, it just results in higher quality. Glenn, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that the other segue of that is, yes, we have the quality, we have the team. We try to emphasize the familyness about our business. You're not just someone who comes in the door and clocks on and goes.
Mm-hmm.
But every business makes mistakes, and any business that says they don't is kidding themselves. Even aerospace makes mistakes. It's how we fix those mistakes and then investigate after the fact. I mean, our customers need to keep running. There's no point pointing fingers at the front end. Just solve it, keep them moving, and then sit down and discuss and where and what went wrong and which side it was on, and then work it out from there. But I think we're a bit old school and more ethical on that side, as opposed to just standing behind a wall and saying, "Nah, it wasn't us." Sort of attitude.
That's how we did business at Rapid, the sheet metal company that I owned, and we prided ourselves on the quality. And I think you guys are being a little not taking enough credit. It comes from the top down. If you tolerate bad quality, then you'll probably get bad quality. And if you don't, if you insist that parts go out correct, you're willing to delay a shipment rather than ship bad parts to make a number, then you are sending a message to everyone. So the thing that we were known for, I guess, with our customers is, yeah, we would admit the mistakes and we would come back to them as quickly as we could with a plan A to fix it. And if that didn't work, we had a plan B. We just kept going till we fixed it for the customer and made it right. Because as you said, Glenn, they've got to make parts there. They've got to make their product. They've got to ship, and the excuses don't help them. So we gotta keep them going. So I love that attitude. I think it's definitely a big thing. But let's get nitty gritty. Because I know there's always little things that make a difference in the quality. You mentioned some of the technology, some of the process. Tell me one or two things you've done in the last year that maybe bumped it up a notch.
Last year, Nath. If it was the last 2 years, it'd be easier.
I'll say the last 2 years, maybe.
I mean, both Nathan and I, as a lot of other people in our positions, but we take real responsibility for researching and including our team in researching. So it could be just one of the guys in grinding or in welding, giving them a task to find something that might help them in their daily work, whether that be at a local trade show or on social media or internet. We try to, once every 2 years, if we can, travel. So FabTech was a perfect example of where we found quite a lot of technologies in welding that we didn't know were out there, and brought a lot of that information back and gave that to our welding department and operations team to pick through and see what might be of interest and then investigate from there. And then again, same with the software side, so technology, being able to find the right quoting platform that has minimized or actually removed the vast majority of errors that were occurring in the estimating side, which only helps quality because you're not rushing your products because you've quoted it incorrectly and you haven't allowed enough time. Those types of little things that helps everyone and I think removes the workload of everybody's shoulders, makes life easier because I mean work's hard enough as it is. Why do you want to go to work and have to be struggling every day? Make it as easy as we can.
Sounds like the two of you are pretty open. If people say that this is an issue, something's holding me back, you're willing to listen and you are willing to make investments to fix it, to help them. Does that ring true?
It is, yeah, 100%. I mean, just currently, without going into all the details, but we do have a robotic welder cobot, and a couple of our staff members have been talking about some softwares and things we may be able to do with it. And we've just finally started to do that because we investigated it and they convinced us that it was the right way to go, and they've taken ownership and they're running with it. So it makes a big difference.
Huh. You guys give your machine's name?
If it's broken down, it gets a name.
It's like as we get these cobots and robots, it just made me think it's like they're starting to become more human. So maybe you guys are giving them a name. Yeah. I don't know. Just throwing that out there.
Not really. We have a robot bender, which is not a Trump brand, it's a Marta, and it's fantastic. And we did put a photo of our sales rep's face on there. So when he came into the building, the robot's doing a little dance, and so we sort of called it his name for a day. But yeah, I don't think we've got any nicknames. A few of the guys on the floor and girls might have some nicknames for some stuff, but nothing that's concrete solid.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me shift a little bit. So you are not the original founders of the company. Tell me how the two of you came into the business, and it's a family business, how it operates as a family business.
Nathan and I have been in sheet metal for a long time, originally in New South Wales. And Nathan actually is a tradesman. I'm not. I don't have a trade. I'm more of a trade of life and on the job. And then my father-in-law, Kevin Johnson, say his name, he's a lovely man, passed away. And then we had the opportunity of being the ownership of Queensland Metal Tech. And that was roughly 8 years ago. And then it's gone from there, leaps and bounds. So we've both been involved in sheet metal for decades. Family's been in sheet metal as a whole for 70 plus years. And we just believe in how things were done back in the day. You could actually have a handshake and make a deal and honor that, as opposed to having a 750-page document that you had to sign and sign your kids away before you could do anything.
So the two of you are you the two directors of the company? Are there other directors?
There's other directors. Yeah, I think there's 5 in total. So Glenn and I are the only active directors who are working in the business. And yeah.
How do you two figure out who's going to do what, and how do you get along? How do you resolve areas that you're not aligned?
We're talking multiple times daily. It might be that, we feel that the other person is better suited to the challenge at hand. It might be that, you're having a bad day, you don't feel like attacking that problem. We work well together, and I feel like between the two of us, we can solve most of the challenges that are thrown at us. And it helps having a good relationship and understanding who each other are. So, yeah, so far, so good.
How long have you been working together?
So 7 or 8 years now, Glenn.
As this, with being MTI and directors, and then prior to that, your whole apprenticeship, so 4 plus
20,
10, 14, yeah, it'd be 20 something years. Yeah.
Okay. What else is important to know about MTI and what you guys do, some of your history?
MTI is a great place. It's in one of the sunniest spots of the world. Beaches are nearby. We love to have some Americans come down and be some technicians and come and see what the Aussie life's like.
you're recruiting is what I hear.
I can't help myself. I do that in the middle of Trump in Armada, wherever. It's like you see a good technician, give it a shot. But not our friends' businesses. We don't do that. But I don't know, Nath. It's I suppose. I mean, you touched on your previous business and you spoke about it quite eloquently and fluently. It's not that we find it hard. It's just that it's just something that we do, we believe, and we love. It's in your blood. I can't go out for dinner and, for choice of a better statement, go to the bathroom and look at the urinal and go, how did they get away with that welding? You know what I mean? We can't supply welding like that.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Like
I drove my kids
coating.
nuts.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be saying like, oh, look, you know how this was made, that, you know, they formed it.
Yeah. I suppose it's like anything. If it's in your blood, whether you loved it the whole time or hated it sometimes, but it's something that you think about at night, you wake up, you think of what else might be out there, what you can improve. It's just, I don't know, it's just something you don't have a trouble doing. And that's why I think Nathan and I work so well together, is that no matter where we are, there's always something in the back of your mind and something will trigger it. And we'll have a 30-minute conversation over a coffee or a beer, depending on what time of the day it is or where we are, and nut something out and then say, right, let's go, let's give it a shot.
So I understand that you have been listening to this podcast for a while. Is that true?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I like to listen to a lot of podcasts in my spare time, you know, whether you're at the gym or going for a run or whatnot. And I stumbled across this podcast, and it could just really relate to yourself, Jay, your experiences and your guests. It's not often that you have access to owners or employees' thoughts within the sheet metal sector. I'd actually like to say thank you for starting this podcast and letting everyone tell their story, and for all your viewers being able to listen and learn from people's success and mistakes that they've made along the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the idea that owner conversations are important, and that I guess it's in our blood, so we can't help but want to help each other, because there's so much opportunity and there's so much, I think, business out there that we want to bring our team members up, increase the capacity, and, you know, make our shops better. It's a fun win-win all the way around. You heard about paperless parts. You alluded to the quoting technology earlier, and I want to go back onto something you said, that there were downstream consequences of errors that were made in estimating that seem to have been resolved now that you're using more technology in the quoting process. And can you elaborate a little bit on that? I want to understand what you found, I guess, as the limitations. Maybe you can even tell us how you were quoting before, whether it was spreadsheets or an ERP system, and then what has happened and why it was important enough for you to make an investment.
Yeah, so we were quoting with our old ERP system, which was a great system when it was written in the early 90s. So we weren't using a spreadsheet. However, it was very basic. So the biggest issue we were experiencing was that it just wasn't standardized. So if I am going to quote a welding job, my time is going to be different to Glenn's time and to one of the other estimators, for example. And it wasn't structured as well as paperless parts is. Recently, we've had a big emphasis on ensuring that everything is correct before we send the quote out. Paperless parts has helped us do that with all the formulas in the background, the 3D analyzing tools that it has to pick up on bends, inserts, and so on. So yeah, it's been a huge part of the uptick in our quality.
When you say making sure things are correct, what does that mean?
So there's no misinformation on the job shop floor. You don't want one of your employees in a department coming up to their supervisor saying, this just doesn't make sense. You know, the drawing might not be drawn correctly because you have an inexperienced designer on the customer side. So we're trying to resolve those issues at the front end. And we've found that that's really helped our throughput and our quality.
Are you working more with 3D models, more with print, or more combination?
Yeah, more with 3D models, and prints. However, there's still a lot of sketches that get sent to us, which, creates a tricky situation where you kindly have to turn them away because it doesn't fit the platform. And part of doing that also helps your quality because there's a bit of a he said, she said scenario there. So
You take those sketches and make a 3D model out of them to present to your customer?
no, so we don't offer design services. So we work with a few partners who certified industrial designers. So if the customer doesn't have a working step file or production drawing, we'll send them to our industrial designers and collaborate together to get to the end of the job.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The 3D model is gold.
Oh yeah, massively.
The connection, which ERP system were you guys using in the past?
The company called Manusoft. It was made out here in Australia. It's relatively small. I'm not sure you would have heard of it.
And who are you using now?
MyTrack Pro, which has been fantastic. We implemented that in February last year, and just I suppose the oversight of the business digitally is just fantastic. So that's really opened our eyes. It's taken a while for us to get used to it, but now we're across it. It's really helped us in scheduling, which was an issue in the past. The old ERP just didn't have a scheduling tool, whereas MyTrack Pro has a very advanced scheduling tool. So we're working through that at the moment, but the results so far have been fantastic.
So now that you have an accurate scheduling tool, I find this is something that comes up is a lot of times if you are not using technology for quoting, you manipulate run times and maybe even setup times to get to the price you want. And then if those numbers are passed along to the scheduling to the ERP system, then everything's thrown out of whack because obviously they're not right. So it forces you, sounds like with your MyTrack system, to put in the right run time and setup time. Are you finding that to be true? What transitions have you had to make? Yeah, how did that all change the way you looked at putting numbers in?
Yeah. So when we were implementing paperless parts, we really focused on process times. So before we went live, we did a lot of test studies on various processes to make sure that we had our times correct. We then flew over to Boston to the paperless headquarters and spent a week working with your team and creating formulas to make sure that I suppose the quoting was almost foolproof. So our laser cutting times were accurate, our bending times were accurate, and we went into some pretty high detail there, all the way through to welding and powder coating. We completely changed the way we quote powder coating, which has been an absolute blessing in disguise. It's been fantastic. And yeah, that helps the scheduling tool do its job.
All right. So the obvious question is, how did you used to quote powder coating and how do you quote it now?
We used to quote by the square meter rate, and it's not so good we have a conveyorized line and we powder coat in-house. So now we quote by time and not by square meters. And one of your engineers, I'm going to give a shout out, Miles, came up with this miraculous formula and pretty much understood what we wanted and made it a reality for us. And now quoting powder coating has never been easier.
That's awesome. Well, I know the team loved having you guys in, and I really appreciate you taking it was obviously a big cost and time chunk to come to Boston, and I'm glad you feel that it's worthwhile. The other thing I'd like to ask you is, did you have to adjust your shop rate now that your times were accurate? Because what I found is whenever I tried to come up with shop rates from bottom up, I always came up with a price that was way too high that the customer would never buy at. But everything from every operation, it seemed like, okay, well, I got to charge $60 an hour here. And it all made sense theoretically, but the end price was astronomical. So did that surprise you in how you maybe priced individual operations or how you're looking at shop rate?
It surprised us a bit, but we just recently installed MyTrack Pro, so we just looked at all our shop rates the year before. So then it was actually good timing because we got to look at them again in detail. And yeah, we adjusted certain things up and down to suit the market rate, to suit what we had to charge and so forth. But yeah, installing a quoting platform gives you a good opportunity to revisit that, because sometimes you can just let those rates sit there and collect a bit of dust, and before you know it, you're not competitive in the market, or you're under competitive. So yeah, paperless definitely helped with that.
I think Nath kind of made it a bit easier for us because, as you said, we just went through the process between machine and labor, etc., with MyTrack, and then using the paperless side to prove some points on timings meant that we actually already knew most of our rates were very, very close. And it's really just the labor side and being up to date with current rates that you have to pay nowadays, and then fine tuning from there. Nathan did a huge amount of work on it. And that goes back to, that's his side of the world. He loves playing with those numbers and then presenting them to me. And then we talk about it. But yeah, it was certainly the combination of paperless and my together made the process easier.
I will point out that I did find that the lower quantity rates that we were charging previously, and then when using paperless, were a lot different, which is good because we needed to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Those little jobs, that whether they're prototypes or low volume runs, they do add up and they do make a difference. So that was an interesting find there.
How do you, speaking of prototype, how do you work those into your shop so they don't challenge the production work?
But it needs to be done. So yeah, we use the scheduling tool. We try not to have too much, to try not to allocate too much capacity to any one section, which also can be challenging when you receive a very large production order. So it's just ever evolving. We're constantly looking and reviewing our production. We make it work at the end of the day for our customers.
Do you, I'm not sure how the scheduling software works, but do you, let's say that you can schedule to 100% of your schedule. Is that how you schedule, or do you deliberately say schedule to 90% of it and leave gap? Or
yeah, we have the parameter set at 80% for
80%.
80%, yeah, to allow those prototypes and rush jobs or expedites through the shop. But it's, at the end of the day, it is just a tool, and the reality might not be 100% correct.
Oh.
But at the end of the day, sometimes you've got one of your largest customers needs a quick prototype. We're going to rush it through for them.
Sure.
We've got to serve the customer, but we can't do that for everyone at any given time.
I think it's interesting, though, that you recognize that it's not optimal. Someone might say, well, we want to run the shop at 95% because we want to make sure we're always pushing parts through. And I disagree with that because, as you said, there's always rush jobs. There's parts that whatever get made wrong, you've got to remake them. And if you don't have any flexibility in your schedule, if there aren't any gaps, then you're going to make someone else late, or you put the pressure on the team where it may result in parts being done incorrectly because of you're just pushing them too fast. So I think that's really a great number to share, that it's okay to schedule to 80% of capacity. I never typically found a customer who didn't want to get his parts early. If you actually didn't have anything that came to take that other 20% in the schedule, you ship parts early and they were thrilled.
Yeah, they're a painful customer if they're whinging about getting their job on time or early.
Yeah. I understand that we're recording this in later April of 2025, that the first week in May, that is Australian Manufacturing Week. And that's a big show for you guys. Are you going to be participating in that yourself?
We go down to AMW and we'll be down there having a chat with the paperless crew, etc. But we don't do a booth or a display. We go down and do a bit of network and catch up with some colleagues and other business owners that we don't get to see throughout the year. That's a good opportunity for us to do that.
Yeah, that's more of a show then for the shop owners to learn about technology and that's the
Yeah,
emphasis of the show.
it is. A number of years ago, each day we would flew down 2 employees from a section in the workshop.
Oh.
And like I mentioned earlier, gave them the task of, I'm not your babysitter here today. You go for a walk around the show and find us 2 things that you think would help you at any given day in what you do in the building. So that was quite good. So we use it for those sorts of opportunities. You do see technologies, it's not like a Euroblock or a fab tech. We're only little Australia, and not every machine technology supplier out there flies over millions and millions of dollars worth of machinery. But it's a good chance for the Australian manufacturing industry to get together and see what is out there.
Well, I know the paperless team is excited to come down and to see what the Australian market's all about, and then to have you guys stop by and we can say, hey, this is our first Australian customer. And I have to also say that you guys reached out to us. We really weren't looking to expand internationally beyond a little bit in Canada. And you were so persistent that you needed our technology that we capitulated. And so thank you for wanting us so much, and then having the trust to actually bring the software in house. And I think it's been fun because we really do want to bring the technology to the world. It's happening perhaps a little earlier than we thought it might.
No, it's good. Again, that was Nathan's side, doing the homework and narrowing it down, and then pestering Alan every chance he could. But I also think on the flip side, if I may, you talk about the metal industry and fabricators and MTI specifically today about how you view technologies and improvements. I think us pestering you guys or paperless so much was an opportunity to pursue and improve and add on items within the platform quicker than what was going to be. So I think that's a credit to your team.
What other technology are you thinking about? What's next for MTI?
You've always got to look at redundancies in terms of machinery, the replacements. Every business has an old girl in the back corner. Can you say that nowadays? You could take that one back out. There's a older machinery somewhere in the corner that's still going, but one day it ain't going to work anymore. So you're always looking at technologies to change. Do you stay in the same realm, single punching, or do you continue down the combo route? Do you put robotics in? Powder coating is a big one. I think anyone who's involved in powder coating knows that from what most companies, especially in Australia, are using is so far behind what is in Europe and America for the actual powder coat technology application and platforms and software running that. The powder coat itself hasn't changed much over the decades. That's probably a big one. Our lines, she is not young, does an absolutely fantastic job, and it actually is one of our highest areas of thanks to do with quality, which is quite surprising for the age of the machine. We get beautiful powder coat out of it. I don't know, Nath. It's I suppose welding technologies and grinding, fume extraction, a bit more safety in terms of people's health from fumes and whatnot that is rampant throughout the industry. We're going to knuckle down on those areas and make our dirty environment a cleaner one to try and attract more people.
Yeah, we're constantly fighting that image of the dirty shop and you don't want to work here. And it's actually such a pleasant environment, I think, these days, because there's so much technology and the shops are clean, well lit. Do you guys have AC in your shop? It's almost a requirement these days to keep people happy.
No, we'd love to. We'd have to put a new roof on if we did that.
I'd say there's not many shops out here in Australia. It gets so hot. So I think it's just not economical for most job shops to be able to afford to put in those systems. However, we'll never say never. It would be a nice addition to the building, but it's not at the moment.
We'd be adjusting our rates. I know that much if we put a aircon in the factory.
Well, this has been great, guys. What else didn't we cover that you think is important to put out there and that you think other shop owners might appreciate learning from you guys?
I'd probably just touch on again, you spoke about business owners talking or key staff members. America's probably the same, but in Australia, businesses in Queensland, a lot of businesses won't talk to each other because they view each other as opposition. We have a small handful that we work with together because we have technologies that they don't have and vice versa, and we help each other out. But to get out there and be able to talk to other owners and see businesses, we have 2 businesses in New Zealand that we visit and discuss lots. A lot of it came down to that to convince us on our ERP. And we're looking, like we mentioned before, next time we're in the States to reach out and see someone else in the fabrication game and see how they do things and understand why someone else does something different that you think that makes no sense to me, but it actually does work, and vice versa. It's a great tool for business, and you learn more about technology. You're not just looking at a YouTube or talking to a sales rep. You find out the truth about what you're about to spend millions of dollars on. And, it could be a $500 investment, but it could still be one of the worst things you do. So you need to do your homework. That's all I could to really say, and do it as a team.
You touched on a great point there, Glenn, in that for all the instant communication we have and sources of information now, there's nothing like being face to face, whether you're on the shop floor with an owner or the person who owns, in a sense, that operation or that piece of equipment and makes it work. There's nothing like being face to face or even having that beer afterwards. And that's sometimes when you let the hair down and some of the truth comes out, and some of the gold too. I love it on the show. People throw out something just like an offhand comment because it's so common to them. And I've never heard that before. And I don't think other people have. And that makes a difference. So I love that you guys are open, and absolutely when you're coming back to the state, we will help set you up. I'm sure there'll be owners reaching out to you anyways who'd love to have you come in, but wherever geographically you're going to be, love to connect you with some of the shops that we know and that we think you'd be a good fit with.
It'd be fantastic.
Excellent. What's the best way if somebody does want to reach you? How do they connect with you?
Just be via email. My email is nathan@metaltech.com.au. Glenn's is glenn@metaltech.com.au. So if you have a question or would like to to contact us in any way, please feel free to email us and we'll get back to you when possible.
Yeah, and the website has numerous email addresses for contacts, so it's pretty easy that way. But as Nathan said, more than happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, and chat, and love to line up some visits. Be great.
Well, very appreciative of you guys taking the time to get up early, first of all, today, and have that cup of coffee, get on with me. And thanks for sharing. I'm always interested in manufacturing in other parts of the world, and there's certainly some differences, but there's so much commonality as well. And you guys, really appreciate you being open and sharing a little bit about what you're doing and your story.
Well,
thank you for having us. And we hopefully said some interesting items and weren't too boring for the rest of the community to listen to.
No, I think they're going to eat it up. Well, I'm not sure. Besides, if you're listening to this as an action item, get on a plane and go to Australia. We'll just leave it there. Until next time, keep those lasers cutting and their spindles turning. Have a super day.
Thanks for listening to the Job Shop Show podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. You can also leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Not only do I read every single one, it also helps me understand what content matters most to you. Thanks again for listening to the Job Shop Show.